Colavito points out that all of their evidence is circumstantial, and that in the 1960s, the atheistic Soviet Union promoted the ancient astronaut concept in an attempt to undermine the West's faith in religion.
Like a calculated one?
Yeah, basically, like, this might have been a big thing that they were pushing to destabilize the West.
Collusion?
In some
collusion going on?
a little collusion between the Russians.
Wait, whoa. Russia trying to destabilize the West?
I know. Even
guys,
in the 60s and 70s, like, let's
that's
not
a
go
little
crazy.
conspiracy theory, though. I mean, come on, guys, come on. A little crazy.
A little insane. However...
Wait, time out! Speaking of which, how come this shit can be real, but Russia colluding with the government cannot be real?
Fake news.
Yeah.
Cannot be.
Fake news.
I literally can't. Sometimes I just want to just punch the air. I just want to punch the air with rage.
You can do it.
Listen,
How
man,
do it.
We can pick and choose our conspiracy theories. If you believe in one, you gotta believe in them all. That's fact.
I'm just saying, man. Fake news. Government. Why would they meddle in our government when they could be meddling with aliens instead?
That's how I feel. I would meddle with the fuck out of aliens.
So, to further this hypothesis, however, because obviously people still believe that this is true, between 1972 and 1977, seismometers, I guess is what you call them, installed on the moon by the Apollo missions recorded moonquakes, and the moon was described as ringing like a bell during some of those moonquakes, specifically the shallow ones. This phrase was brought to popular attention in March of 1970 in an article in Popular Science, when Apollo 12 deliberately crashed the ascent stage of its lunar module onto the moon's surface. It was claimed that the moon rang like a bell for over an hour, leading to arguments that it must be hollow like a bell.
Aren't there audio?
No, I
aren't
think
there
that's-
audio recordings of Apollo 12?
There must be out there. I was too busy listening to Reptilian
I want to
Aliens,
hear this fucking
so-
moon ring.
Right.
I would love to, like, that stuff's fascinating. I'd love to know what it sounded like, and then I'd love to know what the theories are. I think that's interesting. Like, that alone would be a great episode, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Digging into that would be fascinating because, while most of this I think is BS, this is a thing that happened, and so we can listen to it and try and figure out what it means.
It's like the Taos.
Because it
It's like
exists,
the
it's
Taos
real.
hum or something,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
Like it ringing like a bell did happen. Like that is something that does happen when it gets smacked, and that's where a lot of this whole like the moon is a spaceship.
That's fucking
or
weird.
Some sort
That's
of thing.
weird as hell.
Yes, that's fascinating. That, I think, that deserves further study because that's an interesting thing that we have evidence of something. It isn't just like crackpot theories. We have evidence of a thing, and I think that's interesting.
So they actually did do a little bit further study when that happened, and lunar seismology experiments since then have shown that the lunar body has shallow moonquakes that act differently from quakes here on Earth due to differences in texture, type, and density of the planetary strata, but there is no evidence of any large empty space inside the body, generally saying like the reason it's ringing like a bell is because the moon is made up of way different stuff than the Earth, and the core of it is not iron like ours is. So it's going to act differently, and the quakes are generally created by the tides on Earth and the gravity difference between Earth and the moon. These moon quakes are not caused by tectonic plate shifts like they would be.
But,
there are no
oh
plates.
God,
Is
I'm
that the
starting
idea?
What was
No
it?
plates on the moon? Is that what's up?
I think there are, but I don't think they act like they do on
see.
Earth. Like it's just
Because there's
it's
no
a
core.
different composition.
Right. And now I'm gonna get like fringy here. Then why use the phrase "ring like a bell"? Because bells sound the way they sound because of the fact that there's like a ball, there's like nothing in it, and there's a little ball that like so.
It can do with their molecular like a tuning fork, for example. Like if you smack that thing, it's not hollow. It's just like the shape of it makes it go like.
Yaw! But the reason why it's heard is because there's enough room for the sound vibrations.
Right.
Like if the moon was a solid mound of mantle dirt or mantle ore, it would you'd hear like a noise, but it wouldn't be a bell noise. I think
That's why I
is
wanna hear the
fascinating,
fucking
and I'd
noise.
love to figure out. Yeah, I'd love
for
to
an
figure out
hour
what that
is
was
crazy.
about.
Like an hour?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Yeah, said over an
Yeah.
hour.
And that's because there'd be a muffled, right? It'd be muffled if it was a solid object.
Depends on how loud
Right?
it is and why it was ringing. It could be a million different things. Like there's these rocks
And then
that, like,
space,
sing.
there's no sound in space. So like, was it the sound waves? I literally don't
the
know.
moon has
this is
an atmosphere.
fascinating.
The moon has an atmosphere, so sound can travel.
Yeah.
But like, the thing that's crazy to me is like, there's nothing that makes a sound like that. Like, that's natural. Like, except for these like rocks that are somewhere in America, I think, where if you like hit them, they make a weird like long sound. And
Now this is fascinating. This, if there were YouTube videos of someone going into depth on this, which I'm sure there are, now I have to find them. This I think is fascinating.
Well,
it's much more interesting and I want to say credible to have a crazy theory about this stuff than it is to be like it's a hologram.
Right. Well,
This
I
I
agree.
think is fascinating.
But I mean, like, to go further, that, you know, it's not necessarily on the outline I give you, but I have it here, is basically what the scientists say is that there's 4 different types of moonquakes on the moon, and they're generally caused by solar, the sun causing moonquakes, tides on Earth causing moonquakes, impacting meteors, and the 4th kind is a shallow moonquake occurring roughly a couple of tens of miles. And what they say is the reason it all comes down to water. On Earth, when there's an earthquake, generally, like, the water and the surface deaden the vibrations very, very quickly on Earth, so we don't really hear anything. As energy from an earthquake moves through our planet, that damp material acts like a sponge, absorbing the energy of the waves and ultimately deadening their effects.
The watermelon.
But the moon is right. But the moon is dry, cool, and rigid, more like a solid rock than a sponge. So even if a moonquake is less intense, there's nothing to deaden those vibrations around the moon itself. They just go back and forth through the body until the solid stone eventually stops them. The ringing bell is the shock waves reverberating through that stone.
it still seems just super jarring to me that it's like,
That's the NASA explanation as to why it rings like a bell.
that is so shock. Like, I look at the moon and I'm thinking like, if you smack it, it just goes like, BOOM! Like, that's crazy to me. That's insane.
Yeah, it's cool, but I mean, like, they do have like what they believe is the reason it rings like a bell. So that's that's it. But I mean, we could go again. That's another thing you could just dive into, I'm sure, for hours and hours and hours. But that's like a quick that's like a 2-paragraph NASA explanation as to why it rings like a bell. Do you believe that, Jesse, or do you still think there's more to it?
I mean, do I believe that it's hollow?
No. Do you believe
it
the
like a
reason
bell?
the reason it rings like a bell is because it doesn't have anything sponge-like material to stop the vibrations from happening.
Yeah, no, I like I said, I think that information is something I would love to learn more about. I'm not sure what it means. I would never dare be like, this is what it all
There's
means.
just so few
But I
solid
think that's
objects on Earth that have that property that it's hard for me to swallow.
Right. Yes, absolutely. And so, because of our experience on Earth being like, well, if it makes that noise or has that reverberation, it's because it's hollow and there's enough room for the sound waves to bounce back and forth. And I think that following that path is super interesting. But I don't know that it means there's aliens. I feel like there's the one step forward that people keep taking that, yes, there must be something even more sinister. If you came to me and said the hollow Earth theory, or the hollow moon theory is that the moon is hollow and that's why it makes these sounds and that's why this, but that was it. It just was a hollow object. Then I'd be like, okay, I might be able to believe that. But because everyone then takes it to the next step of like, well, then inside is where the Greys live, and they've been monitoring us, and it's like, oof, no, I'm out.
So is there any speculation about the actual nature of this spaceship?
Yes, there are so many. We'll get to those right now. So one of the theories is that the moon is actually a generational spaceship.
Like Titan AE?
So, yeah, like Titan AE, like a spaceship that's sent out to explore the stars, or maybe even sent to Earth specifically. But those who are on the spaceship when it launched are not those who are going to see its final destination. It's their generation and after generation of their children and stuff.
Like an ark.
And that lives inside it. That it will, like an ark that is going to see the things. And the reason the moon is so big and as for a spaceship is because they need to pack it with things, right? They need to pack it with food and things to live and all this other stuff, as well as thousands of aliens sent out by that planet as a quote-unquote moving colony filled with hyper-intelligent alien species. This moving colony was sent out to either explore the stars or find a new planet. And some of that, the reason
So
why
wait, are we supposed to be the descendants of this moving colony?
well, there's two theories. There's more than two theories, but you can boil it down to two theories. One, the moon is a generational spaceship, or a spaceship filled with aliens, not necessarily generational, that was here to seed life on Earth. and that we may be descendants of that particular alien
Prometheus
species
theory.
Yeah, like that kind of thing. Or
that's neat. I don't believe it, but that's neat. I think
there's also theories though that like aliens came by and scooped up monkeys and then ran away for a few years and then came back with what would eventually be cavemen, and like they hyper advanced evolution for us by like a good chunk, and then put cavemen back on Earth. And very like that reminds me of Spore in a lot of ways.
It really is.
Yeah.
I think because we have everyone keeps looking for the missing link, right?
Yeah, the quote-unquote missing link, yeah.
Yeah, and because there is no such thing, I think, up until the point we discover something, anything's game. I think it's neat being like, and then aliens came along, and you know what? We're gonna mess with this planet. That's a fascinating story, but I think everything's a story and everything's a theory now because there's no evidence of what the transition was. It just sort of happened, and I guess we could say over millions of years, these apes became men, but no one knows the process of how that happened.
It's just such a big thing to
And so
speculate about without any sort of like justification.
Evidence. Yeah.
Oh well,
It's
clearly but I think it adds to the many theories out there.
Sure.
I don't believe
Right.
it, but I think until we have evidence that says this is exactly what happened, everything is game on this. I like the idea of just being like, yeah, we're kind of like space children. I think that's neat. I don't believe it, but I think it's neat.
It's a fun
sci-fi.
There's
There's like going down that particular hole just for a second, like that's in a lot of the interview with the reptilian that I listened to, which is 99.9% bullshit in the first place. The reptilian says that there are aliens that, while they were already a civilized species here on Earth, that's when another alien race came down, kidnapped a bunch of monkeys, came back many years later, gave cavemen, and cavemen worshipped the reptilians for a long time as gods until eventually the reptilians had a fight with that particular alien race that came and fast-forwarded our evolution, and then that particular alien species has been missing for thousands of years ever since that particular fight.
The more I think about all this, the more I'm like, okay, this goes back to the human-centric view of life, right?
Yep.
Like,
A lot of
aliens
it does.
came and made us because we're special.
We're like the one
aliens
ring of
made us.
species.
Yeah, like, or the people who are like, well, Earth is sort of an intergalactic zoo. And it's
Yep,
like,
that's another
okay,
one.
but that just makes us, everything about us needs to make us special. And I think the idea that most people can't accept that either one, we're a crazy fluke in the universe, or two, there's other worlds like ours, and it's not that special in the grand scheme of things. I think people refuse to think that because then it makes our existence, like, pointless, and that scares people. I think that frightens people to death. And so, like, well, we have to be important for some reason, because, again, it goes back to why are we here? And I think the idea of aliens did this, it's fascinating, and it's interesting to think about is that. Just how likely is this?
As likely as anything
it's
else,
not-
man. You just gotta
Oh,
open your
shit,
mind
man.
Well,
to
like,
possibilities.
Even if I agreed with the idea that life was seeded on Earth by an alien race, I still think you would be insane to think that the aliens only seeded Earth and that
Right.
they didn't seed other planets and that we are
Absolutely.
just an experiment of theirs or something. We're not special and that we're just like, they figured out the technology.
Also,
to-
why wouldn't they come back? If we're an experiment, you check in on experiments.
Well, that's where the abduction scenarios come in,
They
right?
take us-
And
But
that's
why
where,
would you?
like,
a
Why
tube
would
in
you
our
only
butt.
abduct people on back roads? If you are an alien, if you are literally, if you are a scientist and you're conducting an experiment, you don't like sneak up on parts of the experiment. Like, I'm only gonna mess with this one little part.
Crime directive.
Like, you're judging all of it.
Directive.
No. See, there's a reason because
Crime
the
directive.
aliens.
Get out of reality.
No,
Ah!
no. There's a reason, man. If you will get there one day, dude, I'm gonna fucking love those episodes. But the reason is the aliens have a pact with the governments of the world where they give technology to humanity, and in turn, they're allowed to abduct X number of humans.
That doesn't
per
make
year.
any sense. The governments of the world fluctuate so much. There's no way that you can tell me
No,
one of
not
them.
those.
black.
It's the majestic.
Oh
dude,
my God! Wait, are you talking about the Illuminati? The Illuminati?
Well, they're sometimes called the Illuminati. They're called the
can't-
majestic, maybe the majestic 12, the New World Order.
I can't even.
The Men in Black.
Listen, there is actual evidence out there that we're going to talk about declassified government documents that do talk about different secret government branches that deal with things that are not known to us. That exists, and that exists, man. I'm telling you right now. There are secret government branches out there that exist, and we have the documents to prove they exist. Do we have the documents to prove they talk to aliens?
No.
Not yet, but maybe one day. But like there are documents of the Majestic 12 that exist. We'll get there. One day. Anyway, back to the moon. The moon could also just be an observatory set up by aliens to watch us and kind of watch how we act.
The
with
Disneyland,
things.
that's like where the guests show up at the wild animal park.
Yeah. There's also the idea that on the moon itself, there are actually alien structures on the far side of the moon that can't be seen. That's maybe where Greys and
Can
reptilians
we actually look at the far side of the moon?
No.
I have no.
The moon doesn't turn.
Yeah, it doesn't rotate.
Yeah, so you
Right.
you can't really see it.
But
we don't know what's on the other side.
We couldn't put a satellite.
There's no light. Like you
confused of
can't
why-
see it. Like there's no light. Like there are scans of it that have been made, but the accuracy that we can do it without like putting something there and like mapping it or like shining a big ass light on it, it's like pretty tough. We can maybe do like a topographical thing from like a distance, but it's a totally different zone of the moon.
All right.
So that's where that comes from. And to add credence to the idea that there might be aliens on the moon's surface, not necessarily in the moon, but on the moon's surface, is actually Neil Armstrong. He came out after retiring saying that he believed, and this is all on record, you can go listen to him say it and all kinds of stuff. He believes that while he was on the moon, they were being tracked by moving lights and believes in alien contact, just like Buzz Aldrin
There are
does.
so many fucking astronauts that are like, yeah, they're aliens. It's crazy.
Yeah, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Edgar Mitchell all say that they believe that they were being tracked, that there was aliens just around the corner. Neil Armstrong was afraid to bring it up because he was afraid to be like yelled at or told he's insane. But has said that they believed the whole time they were being there, they were being watched and tracked and came out with that after he retired.
Two things. I'm just gonna put this out there. One, the least likely of the two. One, I feel like if you think at, I don't know, Star Trek First Contact, for example, where it's like, once you do something major, a major step, then maybe an alien species would be like, oh, this is interesting. That's one. I don't necessarily believe that. Two, the one I'm more likely to believe, and I feel like this is something all humans can relate to. If you're ever alone, if you're ever in the dark, if you're ever in a space that you think it's unnatural and you were worried, you start to think things are happening around you because you're getting all worked up. And I feel like if you're on the moon in a spacesuit and that's all that is, you would literally be so stressed that you might see
the
things,
most
or you
isolated
might misinterpret
people
things.
ever.
Dude,
Just to feed into that second point, like I spent many late nights this week reading about aliens and watching videos about aliens, and the amount of times I swear I saw something out my window at like 3 a.m. just to turn and see nothing there were countless. And the amount of alien abduction dreams I had this week are higher than I've ever had. But yeah, you're right. Like I was alone in the dark watching and reading about aliens, and I like would swear to God I'd see something out my window, but there was literally
But
nothing there.
counterpoint to that though, like Houston to spaceship communications of people being like, the identified craft is outside of our window. We're tracking it on our radar, XYZ, yada yada yada. Like, what the fuck is that though?
Well, those exist. Yes, those exist as well. What was your first point, Jesse? Because it was something I wanted to say.
No, it was the exact opposite. It was the whole thing of like,
okay.
We hit a milestone, and there are aliens out there. Of course, they're going to show up and be like, oh, they're walking on the moon now.
You actually saying that actually reminded me that there is, like, if you look at alien abduction scenarios, while they do exist before the 50s and the 40s, they're a lot more rare. They start to pick up shortly after we learn how to split the atom. And like,
but they start to pick up shortly after we start popularizing the idea of UFOs.
Very true. Yes, also very true. But there is a theory that aliens started showing up more once we as a species learned to split the atom and cause basically nuclear destruction. Harness the power of the atom here on Earth. That's when aliens started showing up and taking a little bit more interest.
Or
in
like
us.
time
And
travel.
again, that's when pop culture started taking interest in aliens.
Yep.
And so the minute it became popular, people were like, I saw an alien. I think that's just something that continuously happens. Every time there's a, like, when Bigfoot became a big thing, suddenly everyone's seeing Bigfoot. When there was chupacabras, suddenly everyone sees chupacabras. And it's the idea that people just want to get caught up and be involved in the moment. And the same thing happens when you look at something like Twitter, for example. 99% of what happens on Twitter is BS, but everyone emulates it because they want to be popular. And so they fake their reality,
It's
right?
like those
and
people who
that's
pretend to be
thing.
that they were at shit. Like that.
Yes.
Going into UFO like research, there's a ton of UFO scientists or researchers or whatever you want to call them that say they were scientists or where they were in the military, and then when you like look into their background, they just lie about all of it.
Yeah.
So and that muddies up the